Hey everybody, Scoutcrafter here again. It's Friday, TGIF. You made it through another week, and thank God it is Friday, huh? This is the 4th of July weekend, so for you, a lot of you, it's going to be a longer weekend, being that the 4th will be celebrated this year on the 5th, on the Monday. And we got a few things to talk about flags, because some of you might be mounting it on a pole. Want to cover some of the aspects you might run into. Let's get to that right away. When your flag is down in the event of high winds, a good idea is to wrap the cord, just run it around the pole once or twice, and that'll stop any banging of the clips or the rope against the pole. So that's always a good idea to stop that noise. Now, many times what you'll see on a typical flag pole or a flag line that's coming from the pole is you'll see we wrapped it around, remember, to stop any noise, because we had some heavy winds last night and we're expecting some more storms today. But what happens is when you bring down your line, a lot of people have this clip hooked onto here, and then they have the top clip hooked onto here with no line in between. So in other words, it looks like this. A lot of times you'll see flag poles, and they do this when the flag is not on the pole. There's a better way to do it. Now, I'm not saying this is wrong, but what this does, it puts a lot of stress on the flag itself, because you're going to put this in the top grommet here, and you're going to put this in the bottom grommet here. Let me show you what that looks like here. I have my storm flag. This flag is very light. It also dries very quickly because we are expecting some bad weather. But when you hoist this up a little bit here, you'll see when we put the bottom grommet, we attach the bottom grommet here to the bottom post. You see what happens here? We have a line that's taking place between the two grommets, so there's no extra stress on the hem of the flag. If you run it with just the clip into the grommets without this center line here, it puts a lot of undue stress on this hem, and that's where you get a lot of damage to the flags, you know? So it's always, this is a better way to do it, and then just hoist it up as you would a regular flag. Another tip is when you get to the top of the flagpole like this, you could feel it hitting the top of the truck assembly where the pulley is. Back off about an inch, and then wrap it around the bottom here like this, because what you're doing here is you're keeping that knot away from the top pulley, which could create fraying of the rope. So just let it come down about an inch below the top of the truck assembly. Now you can see we hoisted the flag, but you can see now that top knot that holds the clip is not rubbing against that top pulley. It's even though it's only an inch apart, that's enough that it won't fray the rope. So that's a good tip. Now, to attach the flag clip, the little nickel clip that goes onto the line, the way I like to do it, and which everybody does, is you just take the line like this, you fold it in half, pass it through the loop like this, through the eyelet of the back, and then the clip goes through here like that, and that will secure it onto the flag line. Now, another step that I like to do, because this can slide up and down the line. You see, I can slide this up and down the line. So what I do to lock it in is, once I have this assembly like this, what I do is I put an overhand knot behind the clip like this. Okay, now when you have that overhand knot like this, and I like to cinch it up nice behind that, you could see it won't allow this to slip up and down. It keeps this hitch nice and taut, and it also gives you a little bit of a standoff from the pole, because now it'll be hanging like this and the flag could stand out a couple inches from. So I like to put that extra knot in. If ever you got to remove the clip, again, it's no problem. You're not cutting the line. All you do is you loosen that up and loosen this up, and the clip comes right out just like that. Okay, we are back down the shop. A couple things, like I said, to talk. And we're going to start off by finishing up talking about the flag, being that it is the 4th of July weekend. It's a big weekend for me. And a good friend of the show by the name of John Summers, I think he's up there in Maryland. John had written in, he said, there's been some changes to the United States flag code, and he thought it would be a good idea to throw it out there. And I thought so too. The United States flag code is basically a code of ethics on how you're supposed to behave around the United States flag and what you're supposed to do with it, how you're supposed to display it, when it should be flown. It covers everything that you can possibly imagine about our flag. And I'll have a link in the description. It was required reading for all my scouts and my troop. And it's very interesting. And one of the things that that the flag code covers is how you're supposed to react when the flag is being raised or lowered or displayed, like during the Star-Spangled Banner or taps or the Pledge of Allegiance, things like that. You know, what do? Do you stand there? Now, typically, it's changed over since I think 2009 was the last amendment to the code, and that was that if you are a military member out of uniform or a veteran, you are now allowed to salute the flag during those appropriate times. And that's pretty interesting because typically when you see the flag being lowered, if you're a civilian or a military out of uniform, in civvies as we call them, you would normally just cover your left, you put your right hand over your left shoulder in respect. You're basically covering your heart. And secondly, if you're wearing a cover, what we call a hat, a cover, anything over your head is called a cover. If you're wearing a cover, you would remove the cover and place that over your left shoulder and stand at attention. Now you're allowed to, if you should see it, if you're a veteran, or you're allowed to salute the flag. But unfortunately, I was in the Navy and the Marine Corps. You're not allowed to salute without a cover on, without a hat, and at any time. And it's funny because it's kind of this strange thing, and I'm sure there's some guys out there kind of laughing about this because we're the only ones that do it. But we cannot salute without a cover on, and the only time that if you're wearing a cover indoors, it's because you're under arms, or you have a firearm on, like if you were doing security or things like that, or a guard or duty. But unless you have a firearm or something, you can't. And it's a funny thing, like if you were on a Marine Corps base and you enter like a bar or NCO club or something, and you're wearing your cover, your hat, you have to buy the entire bar a drink. So, we're real fussy. Even today, I mean, even when I wear a hat, if I go indoors, I take it off. It's kind of a strange thing, I feel very uncomfortable wearing a hat indoors, and it just goes back to that weird thing. But I find that real interesting, and I appreciate John for bringing that up to me. And I'm sharing it with you. I think it's pretty interesting. So next up, a couple things to talk about. Last week, I went to a car show on Long Island, had a great time with some friends, my girlfriend. We had a great time, and it was just a nice little show. And it's been such a long time since I've been to a car show, I kind of forget how much fun I used to have at them. I used to have a couple of antique cars that I used to do the car show circuit. I would go and put my cars in, and it was just a lot of fun, a great camaraderie. And this one had a little bit of a flea market and stuff. I shot some footage of some of the cars. Now there's hundreds of cars there, but I only shot a couple because there was just a wide variety. So sit back for a minute, take a look at these cars, and this is just what caught my eye that day. Tell me what you think.
And where is
Nothing beats a nice, clean Nova.
I don't think it'll show up on print the video.
Beautiful 1963 Plymouth Belvedere. My father had this car, and that's why I was so attracted to it. The owner was a former Marine, great guy.
Semper Fi. Semper Fi. Hoorah.
Hoorah! Now, I guess anybody that saw the original Mad Max movie had to be an instant fan of that awesome supercharger that was in the Pursuit Special car that he drove in that movie. Now, like I said, that was a lot of fun, had a great time. And like I said, if you've never been to a car show before, I highly suggest that you try and go to one. Anyone, you know, they're all pretty good. And, you know, you'll find, and then when you go to one, just like the tractor shows and stuff, ask the people there, say, what's your favorite car show that you go to? Because, you know, that's how you get the word of mouth, is how you find out where all the good stuff is. But it's such a good time, and there's so many awesome old cars that people have restored and they take care of, and it's like walking back in time, really fun. Next up, a good friend of the show, goes by the title Mercury Rising. You'll see that a lot of times in the comments section. Well, he said he's enamored with, and he asked this a long time ago, and I'm sorry it took so long to get to, about crow's foot wrenches. And I don't know if you've ever seen them before, heard of them before. And I was pretty curious about so many things that has to do with crow's foot. You know, there's so many titles. The military has a crow's foot insignia over in the UK, and you hear about crow's foot all the time. And I wondered why. I looked up the crow's foot. You don't see too many crows around here, and so you don't really see their feet much. But I said, do they have unusually big feet, or why do you hear so much about crow's feet, not like other things? Like, for example, eagles. Eagles have the most amazing claws and feet if you've ever seen it. If you've never seen an eagle, or especially a golden eagle or a bull, it's amazing. Those things, you know, you wonder, they're huge. They're tremendous. They scare the heck out of you. So I can understand if some eagle's foot, you know, wow, but crow's feet, they're just like little scrawny little feet. I don't understand why you know. And how's this wrench called a crow's foot, especially when it doesn't even look like a crow's foot? Let's get to it and let me show you what it is. Now, this is my Crowfoot wrench that you could see here. This one here is Tekton. This one here was made in Taiwan. You know, I'm a big fan of Taiwanese tools. I was looking at the fit and finish on these tools. I'll be honest with you, I can count the number of times on one hand that I've used these, because they're very, you know, you don't get a chance to use them much, but these you can see are a 3/8 inch drive. And when I say drive, that means that this little area down here is meant for a 3/8 inch either breaker bar, extension, or ratchet. You can see how they're made. They're well made. Nice, you know, Tekton makes good stuff, and especially either Taiwan or USA, you can't go wrong. But you can see here, this is a SAE set, and how you use these, again, there are different ways to use them, and the mechanics. Now, years ago when we worked on cars, you know, you could change, there was an old joke that says you could change the spark plugs with your teeth, because the engines were wide open and it was so easy to work on. It was actually enjoyable to work on an older engine. Through the years, in the 70s, the 80s, it got crazy. And now they put covers over it. They don't want you doing anything. So hats off to the mechanics today, because they're almost like surgeons, you know. They don't... Years ago, we would go into a car, we would take off, maybe take out the radiator to make some room. Today, they just move, just like if you were doing a cesarean birth. They move everything out of the way, and they kind of work in there with such small areas, you know, and that's just not the way it was years ago. We would take everything apart, and there was so much room to work in, and you could literally sit in the engine compartment and work on your engine back then. And now, you know, you're lucky if you could see what you're working on. So this is where these come in handy, because this is made for really tight areas and things like that. Let me show you how. Like I said, these are kind of a specialty tool made to get into tight areas and whatnot. But your typical Crowfoot wrench is made to and usually used on an extension. This is your typical extension that you have. Now you could use it either on a breaker bar, which is this, or a ratchet, which is this. And speaking of breaker bars, this is here is a Tom Gunn special. This is an SK breaker bar, 3/8. You know, this is something that's pretty compact. Look at this snap-on breaker bar. First of all, you can see the nice little, just again, just to be a little bit nice, you know, they put that little added feature on there, that little adornment, and it just looks very nice, don't it? But notice here, it's offset. Do you see that? This is very rare because, you know, I don't have too many breaker bars that have that. Your typical breaker bar has, you know, it's 90 degrees like this, but look at this one here. It's offset by 45 degrees. So when you put your socket on or something, or your crow's foot wrench, let me show you the difference. When you would put this on here, you could see that it works. It automatically puts it at a 45-degree angle. Isn't that something? Which, you know, again, I didn't notice that until I was pulling this out now. I wonder if you guys have noticed that before. But anyway, you would take this, place it onto your extension, and then using your either breaker bar or your ratchet, you know, you would place this in here, and then you would come here and you would operate either in an area that's tough to get to, either in a deep area or something like this, and you could break the nut as we're doing here. But again, you have to remove it, turn it back over here, and start over. Now, if you use the ratchet, you can get sometimes you could get if you have enough room, you could get the crow's nut to operate to go all the way around, you know, to do a full circle. But many times you're doing it just to kind of break it or snug it up and tighten it. I'll give you another example of how that works as far as in a tight area. Now, while we have this extension out, I thought I'd point out another feature that a lot of people don't know about. Now, if you look here, this is the female end of the extension. If you look here on some of your better extensions, you'll have a hole in there. You see that little hole? That hole right there. Now, you know what that hole is for? Pretty interesting. If you line that hole up with your ball detent, this is your ball detent that kind of keeps it from falling off, it will increase the holding power, because now that ball fits in that little hole there, and it won't come apart. I mean, you could still pull it apart, but it's harder to pull apart. See, I'm going to pull it apart now. There we go. Whereas if I put it in this way, the ball detent is just riding against the wall over here, and it really comes in and out very easily. See, look, comes very easily in and out. There's really nothing to, it'll fall out. I mean, you can still use it that way, but it won't lock it in like that hole will lock it in. That's what that's for. That hole, if you're working with something deep and you don't want this falling in, always make sure you line up your ball detent with that hole. Pretty cool. Now, right? Here is a typical, yet atypical, but it is a kind of place where crow's foot would come in handy. Now, let's say we had a threaded rod or something that had a nut, and it was in a kind of a tube or something like that. You know what I'm talking about. Just to use your imagination. Put it here in the tripod. Now, let's say I had to loosen up that nut. Now, a socket, obviously, I don't have a deep socket that could go down that far. Even if I did have a socket, I couldn't get a wrench in there to turn it. I'm very limited on how I can get that. I mean, think about it. So this is where a crow's foot would come in handy. You take your crow's foot on your extension, like I said, you place it down into the hole, and you can get right around that nut here and then loosen it up. You can see now again, you see how that's why I'm using the breaker bar now, but you see how I'm taking it off, repositioning it, and putting it on again. And again, it's basically to loosen it, and then you would put your hand down, and you could do the same thing to tighten it. So that is one kind of unusual situation, but you see how a crow's foot would come in handy for something like that. Another application where you see the crowfoot wrench used a lot of times is for torquing something down. Here's a perfect example. Let's say I have to torque this nut that's on a shaft or something, but I got to torque this down. Now, you know, with our typical torque wrench, you know, here we have a click style torque wrench. But let's say with our typical torque wrench, you would put a socket on, but how do you do that? You don't have a socket long enough or something. So that's another reason to get a set of these crow's feet. Now, what you do is you take that crowfoot wrench and you put it on there, okay? Now, this is really important. A lot of how the your torque wrenches operate is on distance and length from the handle to where you're going. So believe it or not, to get this to operate correctly, this has to be at 90 degrees so that you're not changing the length. So you would have to turn this around to exactly 90 degrees. You see how that's 90 degrees like that? Now, if you try and operate it like this, it's going to change the torque setting and you won't get the proper reading. So it has to be exactly 90 degrees like that. And then when you put this on like this, you could slip this on here like this, and you could torque your let's get this on here correctly. There we go. And then you could torque your nut down like this, and that'll give you a proper torque rating. And you can also, like I said, you could use your torque wrench, but you cannot, remember, important, never go in like this, because that'll give you a whole different torque setting. And pretty interesting on that. Okay, last up, a couple weeks ago, I saw this cool lantern come up on eBay, and I've been looking for one of these for quite a while, but they're always trashed. The little light on the back, that little beacon, that red beacon dome, is always cracked or split. It's just, you know, so they're out there, but they're never in good shape, and I don't want a garbage example. I wanted a nice one. So this pristine light came up on eBay, and I said, I'm going to bid. It was like 20 bucks. I said, I'm going to bid. I said, I know this is pretty rare. I'm going to bid a little bit higher because, you know, these guys out there, these snipers that come in at the last minute. I'm going to bid. I think I'll go as high as 50 bucks on this thing because I like it. It's an NOS. I'm going to bid 50 bucks. So I'm waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden I check on the lantern later on, and it's well above my $50. So this is where you got to put the brakes on. You can't get caught up in the bidding. But I said, okay, I'll wait. I'll find one day. But look what this thing closed at. Look what it finally sold for. Pretty amazing, right? Some of these things, these collectibles. Anyway, I know the last video was funny. I kept saying it's going to be a short one. That video ran 20 minutes. I couldn't believe it by the time I finished editing. So hopefully this one won't be so long. I hope you have a great weekend. And remember, fly that flag on the 4th of July. If you have any pictures you want to send in to me, here's my email address. Send them in. I'm going to try and put them up on Monday. But like I said, I got a special 4th of July episode planned for Monday. Hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the holiday. Take care now. Bye-bye.